That's better. Okay, apologies for that. I'll just go back to that in a second and get back to where we were. Hello staff, glad you could join us. Can you hear us at all there? Okay, I'm just having a few problems getting back to my screen initially. I can see a couple more of you joined the session, which is great. Will you just type in the text box at the bottom just to confirm that you can hear me? And also just to confirm who you are and let everybody know where you are. Okay, so let's try again. Okay, so here we are now back in the workspace. And as I was just explaining before I just went back to start that recording, one of the great things about the workspace is that once we get into discussions about aspects of the module, you see this button at the top here which says Save Summary to My Asset Store. So this is where if, for example, you initiate a discussion or you contribute significantly to a discussion, you can save a summary of that to your asset store. It will automatically go into your Pebble Plus, and you'll be able to use that as evidence of your engagement within the module for CPD, etc. So that's quite a useful feature to bear in mind in terms of conversations. The other feature you probably won't have used yet is the community one. You can see if you scroll down, this has got a list of everybody who's on the module. Now this is quite useful if you want to send somebody a message. So for example, when I email you all as a group, I just select you all there, click on send a message, and I type a message. So if you, for example, wanted to make contact with one of your peers on the course privately and share contact details, that kind of thing, you would simply just select them from the list here. So for example, if I wanted to just message Claire, I would simply just select Claire and then click on send a message, and I would be able to do that in much the same way as you can do an email. Similarly, because I'm managing the workspace, you can do exactly the same with me. Just check the name there and send a message, and you can message me through the community. So the community feature is quite useful. The resources, hopefully you've located already and seen some things like the screencast here, which is how to access and begin to use your workbooks. The workbooks are uploaded there, but you don't actually access them through the workspace. As you get the message on the icons as you go down these, to view it you've got to go back into Pebble Plus, and I'll show you that shortly. This resource here is a sample web folio. So this is a template that you can use if you want to start and create and develop your web folio initially. What I do recommend to students actually though is that you design your own and you start your own from scratch. But if you really want to use this and adapt it and cannibalize it, all you have to do is click on the copy button, and that will automatically put that sample web folio into your asset store, and you'll be able to start and use it and make it your own. Learning skills profile you will have come across in the induction. If not, that would be something that would be useful for you to undertake as part of the module as well. And one of the things I would like you to have a look at some point is this idea about the welcome map, because this is where it's going to help you in terms of making a first impression in your web folio, because when somebody lands in your web folio, you want to make it feel exciting, engaging, and encourage them to go on and have a look at all the good things that you've put inside. And there's other resources on there as well. For example, here we've got some how-to resources. So these are a range of screencasts. In fact, one of the most important ones to look at initially would be this one, how to create and share a web folio, because the web folio is going to be the submission that you actually make for the final assessment. So that will be quite important. I'll move through some of those a bit later on in this webinar as well. So there's a few things in there which are general PebblePad resources that will be useful to you. And then Activity 1, which is what you're looking at the moment, there are some resources here that will be useful. So example critiques, for example, a video on how to undertake critical appraisal. So do have a look at those at your leisure. Submissions. This is where your workbooks will be submitted. Now you'll see some workbooks are already submitted there, which is great. Eventually everybody's workbooks will be there. Once you've actually accessed your workbook and saved it, it's set to auto-submit, so it will automatically submit once you save it. And don't worry that you haven't necessarily completed your activity or haven't got all your evidence there. This actually updates in real time. But the great thing about this is that it means that when you're providing peer feedback on each other's, you can view each other's in here. So for example, if I just go into Sherry's there, so this workbook is the same for all of you, and what you'll be doing is you'll be posting your evidence. So for example, this one here, it's not showing particularly well, but this is the first one, which is sourcing your article about reflective practice, etc. So that's the workbook that you've all got. Now when that critique of the article is put into the workbook, what you can do then is you can just click on that comment icon on this page, click on Add Comment, type in your comments and save, and you can provide some peer feedback. And in the same way, I'll provide some feedback as a tutor as well. Okay, and again, there's a screencast to show you how to do that, so that'll be something that you can do going forward. Okay, so that's how the workspaces work. The only other workspaces you'll see at the moment are the induction one, which we used in the week before the module started, just to get you a little bit used to PebblePad. And then the third workspace you'll see is the assessment workspace, which is where your webfolio will be submitted. And we'll probably do a webinar about halfway through the module to talk about the assessment and submission, perhaps in more detail. Okay, so that's the workspace. I'll just close that down and we come back into PebblePad. And at that point, I'll just come back to the chat. Just want to double check. Did that make sense? Can you hear me all right? Could you see everything? Are there any immediate queries that arise out of that? All okay? All good? Fantastic. Okay, I'll press on and do a little bit more before I deal with some of your specific queries. Okay, so Atlas is the bit where we're going to engage in conversation and discussion online. Okay, this is a shortcut to your resource center, which you can also get to through the view button here. You can view assets, and then you can go tools and resources and go to your resource center, but these are shortcuts. This gets you into your asset store, where essentially an asset is anything that you create, develop, that you own, and it lives in your asset store there. Let's just have a look at the asset store first of all, just to explain how this works. Mine looks a little bit more complicated because I've got mine linked to a few things here which you don't need to worry about. Key things to bear in mind about this asset store here is there are 3 tabs. At the moment I'm in the By Me part of the asset store, which means all of these assets that are here in this store are mine. I own them, I either created them, developed them, or I'm working on them. In the For Me section, this is where you find assets that people have shared with me, and they perhaps wanted comments on, that kind of thing. So these are assets that people have shared with me either for information or perhaps for me to comment on. And if any resources are shared with you, so for example the student example of a webfolio I shared with you, that's where you will find it, in the For Me section of your asset store. With me, if I just wait for this to catch up, this is where somebody's giving you the ultimate permission, which means they're allowing you to actually collaborate on an asset. So these are people who've shared things with me where they're wanting me to work on something with them and collaborate with them on that. But I don't think you're going to need to worry too much about that in this context. So that's your asset store. By Me is going to be the place where you go most through all of these. And down the side here, you've got a number of categories of different types of assets. So, for example, designs is where you go to if you just want to see your web folios or folio pages. If you want to just see your workbooks, you go to records. So it just reduces it down and helps you to search for things. Media files, those are all my media files, etc. So you can use that when you've started to build up the number of your assets to actually find things in a more straightforward way. Equally, we've got a search facility here. If I just type in PPP, anything that's got PPP in the title or is tagged PPP will come up in the list. So it's just a way of helping you to find and locate some of the things you might be looking for. So that's the asset store. So the second store here is called the Resource Centre, and this is where you've got a shortcut to this here on the toolbar as well. So the thing about the Resource Centre is this is where resources are housed. Now, for the most part, these are going to be resources that I've shared with you as a tutor. If you create any resources, like workbooks, that kind of things, that's where they will live. They'll sit here in the By Me section of the Resource Centre. But at this stage, I don't think you're going to be doing any of that at the moment, because you certainly don't need to do it for the module. But you can see sitting in here are two workbooks that I've created, which I put into Atlas, which automatically means they're available to you in your Resource Centre. So the Activities Workbook and the Professional Practice Portfolio Module Workbook. Now, where you access those is in the For Me section of the Resource Centre. So this is where somebody's shared a resource with you and it's there for you to access. So obviously, there's a whole range of things in here that have been shared with me that I'm able to access. Key thing is, if I select this one, IGRT Week 0, for example, all I do is select it and then click on Use. Once I click on Use and save it, that becomes my asset and I can then start and work on it. Okay, so what you'll need to do is you'll need to go to Resource Centre, For Me, find your workbooks, single click on it, click on Use, and then once you've opened it, save it, and that will automatically pop it into your asset store. Okay, so that's your asset store and your Resource Centre. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. At the moment, the Resource Centre is going to be primarily stuff I'm going to share with you, but over time, as you get more experienced using PebblePad, you may end up building resources as well. But the asset store is going to be the place where you start and do most of the business. Okay, so just pause at that point just to make sure that was all okay. Any queries so far? Everybody following that okay? Excellent. That's good. Okay, let me just clear this then so you can see the screen a little bit more effectively. So the second toolbar that we have along here is, on this side we've got Add New, and this is where you have a series of templates that you can use to start and build and create and develop assets. So if we just have a look in a couple of these, you'll see what I mean. If I go to File, this is where, if you've got something you want to upload and link within your web folio, so something you've got electronically somewhere else on your laptop, computer, whatever, you can go to Upload File, give it a name. So this is going to be something random that I upload. You can put in a description if you like, you don't necessarily have to. One of the things you have to do in order to upload it is to check this box here where it says I'm entitled to upload this because it's either my own or using it doesn't infringe any copyright. So that's just there as a prompt for you as students to bear that in mind. You can see there's a significant file upload size for that, which means you can upload things like video, audio files, that kind of thing. Once you've checked that box, you'll see the browse button becomes active, and I can go and search for something. So, for example, on my laptop here, let's have a look on the desktop. I'll see if there's a file I want to upload. Okay, so let's go for that one. So if I check that, click on Open, You'll see it's popped into the box there. All you need to do then is click Save and Upload. And once you get the processing symbol, you can close it down. It's already uploaded. All it's doing is actually enhancing what you've uploaded there. So if I close that down, if I go back to my asset store, the last asset that you created becomes first on the list. So there's that asset that's uploaded there. And you'll see that was an image. Now that's not particularly exciting as it stands, but I'll show you how we put that into a web folio and make it a little bit more interesting as we go further along. So any type of file, that's the way you upload it. So you go to Add New, Add File, and you go through exactly the same process. Also in here, which is quite useful, there's an action plan wizard as well, which you may have your own action plan, professional development plan, but if not, you may find this useful to utilize as well. And here what you do is you give it a title again. Obviously this isn't inspiring and you're going to put something that's a little bit more germane. You can put your overall aim in there, type something randomly, what you're trying to achieve. And then next one down, what you can currently do, and you can see you just go in and populate the boxes. So these are all prompts. So you can go down, you can put a completion deadline on it, you can do a SWOT analysis, supporting resources. So these are scaffolded templates that are in there, and you can use these several times over, so you may have a series of action plans. Okay, one of the nice things just to bear in mind about this, and I'll show you this again when we get to the Webfolio feature subsequently, is that when you've inserted information in here, if you, for example, just highlight that, let's assume that was something, that was a keyword that I wanted to link something to. I can make it bold, italic, change the colour and the font, etc. But I can also link to an asset, so I can link some evidence within this action plan. So it may be I want to link to that asset there. Single click, confirm, and it's actually there. I can't view it at the moment because I'm in what's called edit mode, because I'm actually building this action plan. If I wanted to view it, I'd go to preview and it would show me what it looked like. In exactly the same way, I could highlight something here, and instead of linking to an asset, I might want that to actually link to a website, and that could be a website you can copy and paste in. Or if it's one you know and love, you can just type it in, click on the tick, and you can see there something's happened. Okay, so you can continue to build that. And if we just have a quick look on the preview, it's not going to be particularly exciting because I haven't done too much here. But you can see those two things that we linked to actually live. So that was the web link there. If we click on that, it takes us straight to the web link, which is great. And then if I click on that there, I was linking to the asset that I just uploaded previously. So that's there as well. So we know that's working, which is great. And it prompts you to save, so you're not gonna lose anything. So the action plan feature is quite good. So that might be something you want to do. The other one that's quite powerful as well is the reflection wizard, where you can see there's a whole range of them here. And this is a good one to choose, the what so what now model for reflection. So if you want to capture reflections, again you give it a title. And obviously you won't have random reflections, yours will be purposeful and meaningful. You can put a date in, you can describe what it is you've done, thought or experienced, what have you learned from this, and then ultimately why is this important and relevant. And again, you populate the boxes exactly the same way. And again, you have the facility where you might want to highlight something and link to another asset or link to a website, some supporting evidence, information or resource. And again, you just close that and it'll prompt you to save. Or there's a save icon here where you can save this asset. So that's automatically been saved into my asset store as well. So these are pre-populated wizards, if you like, that you can use. The CV one's quite a good one. There's 3 different types of CVs. There's a personal, professional and academic. If you haven't got your CV electronically, that might be something you might want to have a play with. Okay, now the bit that is the exciting bit, and this is where hopefully you're going to go to create your webfolio, is design new. And this is where you do have templates or wizard that help scaffold things, but you've got much more creativity and freedom with these. They're not as prescriptive. So for example, the CV in here, essentially you're building it from scratch. It's not a template like the other one. This is where you've got a lot more freedom to make it more customized and individual. What I want to walk you through quickly is just to show you how to start with a webfolio. So you go to Design New Webfolio, and this is a template that comes out. Now initially this properties box comes out here because it wants you to give it a name. So you can call this obviously whatever you like, but I'm just showing you as an example. So if I put my first webfolio, you can see how it's populating on the left hand side. This webfolio houses all my CPD and populate the description as well. But that's already in there. I can get rid of that. It's just getting in the way. So here what we've got at the top here, this is your properties icon, which is what we've just completed there. So if I wanted to go in and edit and change what the title of that or the description, I would just click on the properties box and change it, and it would change on the webfolio. So if we close that one down, this is the edit icon, and we're in edit mode at the moment. But if you were in preview mode, for example, and then wanted to make some changes, you would click on the edit pencil to go back into edit mode. Preview is where you can have a quick and dirty look at what you've created, and I'll show you later how we go into full screen mode as well. The icon for save is exactly the same, and obviously that's for closing it down. So this is the webfolio title that I've got here. Now in order to start and build it, the place to go initially is here, new page. And again you can see the properties box comes out. And hello Kyle, I've just seen a message crop up that say you joined the session, so welcome. So in the properties box here, you can call this page anything you like, but here I'll just call it page 1. The title for the page may be the same, or it may be different. It may be that you want to put something in there that is actually longer than the title on the menus on the left hand side. So the navigation title are the menu items on the left here. The title for the page is what you see here on the page, and then the description. And I'll just put introduction to my webfolio. So you can see it's populating automatically as you go along. So having created a page initially, what I need to think about then is, what do I want the page to look like? And this is where we use the layout tools here. The one on the far right, the badge element, you can ignore, you won't need that. But here I've got a few choices. I can put in the text area, which as you can see appears below there. I can put in a text area with a media box on that side. I could put a text area in with a media box on that side. Or I could insert simply a media box that I want to make a focus for this. So all of these, if you click inside them, you've got a number of options. So if I decide, for example, I don't want the text box there, I want it underneath the previous one, I can toggle it up and down. Now, even if this is populated, full of evidence, images, videos, doesn't matter. You can move these sections around. So the layout is essentially about what do I want my page to look like, having created the page. So let me just put some text in here. Okay, now the great thing about the media file is if I click there and go choose media file, do you remember that media file that I uploaded as a random asset that didn't display particularly well because it was just uploaded as an asset? If I just click on that now and click on confirm, can you see it displays much more effectively here, and I can put some text alongside it. And can you see there's a little drag down there? I can increase the size of that there as well. Now, one of the things that happens when you insert something in the media box is you get another properties box comes out. So I could put something like distance learning image in there. And you can see it's starting to appear at the bottom there, but I don't actually want it there. I want it to appear as part of the image. So if I check include caption as rollover, it comes up there when you put your mouse over the image, which is quite neat. Now if I actually wanted that image to link to a website, I could just actually type in a website. Like we did previously. And that's there, that'll be fine. And what I'll do is when I show you the preview of that, I'll show you how that's worked. Here again, we've got some text which we can either link to another asset, or we can link to a website, or it may be that this is, I'm putting my name in and I want to put an email link in which case I just type in my email address. Check the tick, and that's linked there. Okay, so we've got a bit of information that we're putting in there. Let's go for another media file here. So if we go for let's go for that one, which was Answer Garden from the module for week 2. And again, you can put in images and you can give it a caption, you can link to a website, etc. And here again, this is just exactly the same. Check media file. So look, there must be a screencast or a video in here, if you just bear with me a second. There we go, there's a video there. So if I link that one into there, this is something from an online open day that a diagnostic imaging colleague used. Okay, so I've got my first page there. If I want to add another page, this is where I come to these icons on the left hand side, where you get the option of adding an existing page that you may have already created in another web folio. You can add an existing asset as a page, but we'll just go through the process again just to get you comfortable with what happens. So it's a new page. We get the properties box again, so we need to call this page 2 or whatever you like. Okay, and then here again, what do we want the page to look like? That's all I want on that page now. If I want to add another page, exactly the same. So page 3. And again, if I just add that to the layout there, so we've got something going on. So what you can see here is we're starting to build up the web folio now quite quickly, and you can just add pages as quickly as that. Once you've got all your pages added, you may find you want to move them around. So for example, if that is labelled page 3, I don't actually want it to be there, I actually want that to be my first page. I can just lift it and move it around. Even if it's full of evidence, it doesn't matter at all. So you literally click on it and pull it down, put it in position, so you can move these about where you want them to be. Okay, now on these icons at the top, do you remember we had a preview button? Which if I click on preview this asset there, this is where we can check if the links are working. So here where we embedded an image and we embedded a web link within the image, you can click into the image and it takes you to the website or whatever it was that you linked to the image. So that's quite a neat way of doing things like that. Similarly, the thought icon, that's going to take a while to come up, but it literally comes up with an email and you could actually type an email to me, etc. So you can see how it's starting to build up and how very quickly you can start and begin to aggregate things. So for example, this is just an image from a Blackboard Collaborate session we did for diagnostic imaging for an open day. But if that was a video, you just click on play and the video would play exactly the same. Okay, so that's a very quick run through in terms of building your web folio. The other thing, just quickly, because I'm conscious of the time and I want to make sure I answer your questions, is that it defaults to Sheffield Hallam University as the banner at the top. Now, if you left mouse click on the banner, so I need to go back into edit for that. Left mouse click, you can pull some banners across. Now some of these are ones that obviously I've created myself, but there are some default banners that are already in the system from PebblePad. So if I just go past all these that I created individually. Here we are. So these are some of the default banners that are in there. You can actually create banners yourself by going into tools and resources, and that's something you can have a play around with subsequently. If I wanted to change what this looked like, say for example that was the one I wanted to choose, let's just go to preview and see what that looks like. Now at that point all you're getting is a quick and dirty view of what it's actually going to look like. But once you're in preview mode, can you see you've got another button there, full screen preview, which if I click on that, that actually shows you what it looks like when it's fully opened up. So whatever banner design you choose, it's important that you look at it on full screen because you need to know what it looks like in that view. Okay, so let's just close that down for a second and we'll go back into edit mode. Okay, so edit mode is where you create, preview is where you have a look at what you've done. And I can go back into here now. I could, for example, add an existing asset as a page. So here there's some assets that I've created that are folio pages, which I could just, for example, click on that one there and confirm, and that would add that page in for me. I could find another one, that one there, and confirm, and that would find it for me and embed it there. And again, I could move it around if I like. Now, one of the great things about this to bear in mind as well is if, for example, here I want to choose a media file, if I haven't got that media file actually in my asset store, I can go look for it. I can click on upload, and in exactly the same way as where we did upload file, I can have a look for another random image, if you ignore the spelling. And if I go browse, I can just go find it. Let's go to desktop again. And let's go for that, which is the college logo, which many of you will recognise. And once I've saved and uploaded that, close down and it's processed, all I do is I just select it there, confirm it there, and it comes up already. So once you're in the web folio, you don't have to come out of it to go to add new to import files. You can actually do it while you're building your web folio, which makes it quicker. And obviously you can start typing your text in the text boxes as well. What you can also do is, if you use Control-C for copy and Control-V for paste, if you've got something in a Word document that you want to actually paste in here, you can do that. You might have to play around with the formatting a little bit, but essentially it works. So if we just save that now, what we'll find is we go back into our asset store. That's the last thing that I created there, which was the web folio. If I just go into view now and see what we've quickly done. Obviously this is fairly meaningless, it's a random example, but you can see how quick and easy it is to start and build this up and start and incorporate some evidence and information. So although it feels a bit daunting at the moment, I don't think it's going to be quite as bad as you're expecting once you get going. But this is one of the reasons why I really wanted you to build it from scratch, so that you can actually start and design it yourself rather than use the example that I showed you. Okay, so at that point I think I've been talking for quite long enough. So we've had a few people join us late, which is great. So that's been a quick run through some aspects of PebblePad and the way you might get underway in terms of building your web folio to showcase your evidence and also to meet the requirements for the module. Have you got any initial queries or questions arising from that? Anything you'd really like to know about PebblePad or how it works, anything I can show you, just type in the chat box on the bottom left, and I'll pick that up as we go along. I'll just have a little scroll through. I don't think anybody's posted anything so far, which is great. Kerry's asked, do PDFs upload in the same way? Exactly the same. Doesn't matter what kind of file it is. Could be a Word document, could be a PDF, could be an image, could be a video. Exactly the same. So I'll just wait a minute or two until the questions come in. I can see Diane's typing something. All seems clear, that's good. Just need to play with it. I think that's an important point as well, is to not be afraid of it. You can't break it, there's nothing you can do to crash it. I think if you just play around with it, familiarise yourself with what's in there, I think, you know, as long as you're doing it little and often and not leaving too long in between the sessions, I think you'll very quickly pick things up. One of the things I would point out to you here is, if you look back to the centre of the screen, can you see this help menu? This is really useful. So if you're wanting help on something, for example in Pebble Plus, how to do something, it comes up with this menu here, and there's lots of walkthrough videos, PDFs, screenshots, that kind of thing. So for example, if I were to go to, how do I design a webfolio? I'll go to Design New, go to Webfolio, and here you get some useful tips. There are videos, there are screen grabs, and it walks you through the process. So essentially, more or less anything you would need to do, you could find in here. So if you wanted to have a look in tools and resources, for example, you can see here just unpacks. So if you wanted, for example, to customize a banner and really personalize your webfolio, that would walk you through what the process is for customizing the banner, etc. So the help menu, really useful. So I'd strongly recommend that you do make use of that as you're going along. Oh, Steph, it looks a lot less scary than when you looked earlier. That's great. Absolutely great. Is it possible to hyperlink to a group of assets rather than one at a time? It is if you've got your assets grouped on, for example, a folio page. So I showed you the web folio there. Let me just move this across out of the way. If you go to Design New and go to folio page, the principle is exactly the same. The difference is this is a single page web folio, if you like. So you could actually group, for example, a whole range of reflections on here. You build it and create it in exactly the same way, and then you could hyperlink to that, and that could actually be housing a collection of different resources and assets that you're wanting to link to. So that's probably an effective way of doing that. So hopefully that answers your question in relation to that one. Let's have a look, see if I've missed any more. We couldn't get a PDF to upload on the previous module. That's an interesting one. It'd be worth trying that again. There's no reason why you shouldn't. I think it should allow you to do that. The other way around it is if you want a PDF to display effectively, is one of the things you have access to through Shoespace is Google Apps. I don't know if you've played around with that, but you can actually upload a PDF to Google Apps and actually generate a hyperlink, so that in the same way as you've seen as linked to websites, you could actually link to a PDF, so it actually displays better than just uploading it as a PDF. Then you've got to click on the PDF icon and then actually open it. So if you can actually generate a hyperlink to it, that displays much more effectively. So hopefully that will help in that respect. Okay. So Terry's got a question now. I understand we're showing evidence in the webfolio, but what are we showing evidence of? Okay, let me come back to let me find the sample webfolio that I shared with you. So this is the web folio that I gave you permission to copy. So in terms of what you're actually evidencing, what you've got to bear in mind in terms of this module is that you're actually doing two things. First thing is, primarily, this is a web folio submission for assessment of the module. So the module learning outcomes you have to meet. So you need to look at the assessment criteria within the module in order to do that. If I just move that out of the way for a second and go to the module workbook. Okay, so in here, in your assessment brief, this gives you all the information about the assessment itself. Okay, now within here you've got the assessment criteria, and these are the things, these are the boxes that you've got to tick in terms of the module. Now what you've also got to bear in mind is you're producing this web folio to hopefully benefit you in terms of evidence in your CPD as well. So you're kind of doing two things in one in the module, which sometimes makes it feel a bit heavy for students, because not only have you got to do the bits where you show your level 7 writing and thinking to meet the assessment criteria, but to make it all hang together, you've got to put in other stuff that's more descriptive, but does make your web folio work. So it's a little bit like if you do a project and then you put a lot of things in appendices. This is very similar, except that your appendices are actually integrated within your web folio. So although the assessment part itself is typically 3,000 words at level 7, that only really applies to those aspects where you're trying to meet the assessment criteria. So things like where you're doing your CV, if you've incorporated a CV, if you've incorporated information about appraisals that you've had, or well, anything essentially that you want to use as evidence of CPD. So for example, if you've been to a study day and you're uploading a reflection, that's great, and that'll be great evidence that will help you to meet the requirements for your professional or statutory body in terms of achieving those. But it's not necessarily written at level 7. So the web folio will contain a lot of things that are not written at level 7. So probably the easiest way for me to illustrate that is to show you the sample web folio that was shared with you, which was from Claire, who very kindly allowed us to have a look at her web folio and show you what we were doing in the module. So just to illustrate what I was saying visually. So for example, in here she's done things like a profile. This is a bit about her and her journey. This is a situational analysis where she's looked at her role and whether or not she actually meets the requirements, how she got there, where she wants to go in the future. Now all of this is great, and this is what you need in the CPD web folio, but this is not level 7 writing and thinking. So this doesn't really contribute in terms of ticking the boxes, in terms of meeting all of the assessment criteria. You know, so things like goals and aspirations. This isn't necessarily a level 7. It's all great stuff for a CPD web folio. But what she's done to demonstrate she's met the assessment criteria is here she's done a couple of pieces that we call set piece inclusions. This is one focusing on CPD, where she's negotiated the title she looks at. So she's looked at the importance and the challenges of CPD, and she's done that. She's integrated evidence, she's integrated literature, and there's a really nice discussion going on there. And that's an easy way to start and think about the level 7 aspects that you might build in. And here she's done one on reflection, for example. This was another of her level 7, where she's reflecting on reflective practice and how she uses it. So, you know, she's talking about what is it, why it's important. She's linking information all the way through. And this is where she's demonstrating the level 7 stuff for the module. But then alongside that, she's started collecting evidential packages. So for example here, she's got a journal club. Oh, that's interesting. Why has that gone through there? Here we go. So this is a journal club. So this is information and evidence that she's going to use within her web folio there. And you can see they've reviewed articles and so on, and she's done a critique, which is great. All good evidence for CPD. She's looked at some hot topics in the media and written a little bit about that. Great evidence for HCPC, but this is not necessarily level 7 in terms of writing and thinking. It's not integrating evidence and utilising it, looking at the literature critically, etc. But it's all important to make the portfolio work and the portfolios hang together. Here, she's integrated her utilities. So these are the things that you'll be working on throughout your module as well. And she's integrated what she's actually done in amongst there. So that was utility 1, for example. And at the end, one of the things she has done, which is important to meet the assessment criteria, is a summary of her learning and what she's gained from the module, that kind of thing. And here she's applying it to the learning outcomes. As they were then, the learning outcomes have changed now slightly, but you'll see them in the module descriptor. Okay, so that was a bit long-winded, but it was actually quite a complicated question. So I'm just hoping that that's answered the question. Did that make some sort of sense, Kerry? It did. Great. That's good. Okay, so how are we doing for time? We've still got a bit of time left. Has anybody got any other queries or questions at this point? Or is there anything you'd like me to show you or go through? Key thing I think is not to be scared of it. You know, to have a play, have a look around, see what's actually in there. So this, for example, was just a sample that I shared with you. These are things you might want to put in as page headings. You might do a little bit about me. And that's where, if you go to the resource that was about the welcome mat, which is about having an impact early on, trying to engage your reader so they want to then go in and have a look at stuff subsequently. Self-appraisal is something that's really important to do as part of a CPD portfolio. It's not level 7, but this is about trying to identify what are your strengths, what are your areas for development, what needs to go on that professional development plan, etc. So that you can have a look at your leisure. All of those resources are there for you to look at. I think one of the challenges that this module presents is that you're working in pedalpad and it's probably the first time you've done that for most of you, so that's unfamiliar anyway. All the modules delivered through here, so the module site is in the workbook. But the great thing about that is once you start using your utility workbook, for example, all your evidence for the utilities is in the workbook. It's all in the one place. And within the workbooks, there are links to the workspaces that you'll need to use, conversations, where to post queries and questions, etc. So it's literally one click out, one click in of your workbooks. So once you get used to the way of working, you should find it very straightforward. Are there any pitfalls to be aware of? Yes, actually there are, Steph, and one of those is, if you remember when we were walking through that webfolio of Claire's with all the evidence, one of the things you've got to bear in mind is, for the module, you've got to meet the assessment criteria. That's your priority in terms of passing the module and hopefully scoring heavily. Sometimes where people get distracted is they start compiling loads and loads and loads of evidence, which is great, doesn't necessarily help them meet the assessment criteria, but it's brilliant from a CPD point of view, and if HCPC came knocking, you'd be in a perfect position for that. So it's about striking the balance between how much evidence do I put in alongside I've got to make sure I meet the assessment criteria. So the key thing I would say initially is make sure you meet the assessment criteria first of all. You've got 3 months or so to do this in. Nobody's expecting you to totally capture the totality of your professional experience in all of that time. So if you're going to accumulate evidence and put it in, be selective. Don't try and put it all in. You can always go back after the module and start and add to it and continue working on it. Selectively cherry pick the bits that are either easiest to evidence or show you in the best light, but you don't have to put it all in. And I think that's where some people fall down. They concentrate too much on the evidence and the parts of the webfolio where you're not necessarily meeting the assessment criteria at the expense of the bits that you need to tick off to score heavily in the module. Does that make some sort of sense? fabulous. Actually, the other thing I would say in terms of pitfalls is that I know the way sometimes some students work is that they tend to leave stuff and do it all at the last minute. This isn't the kind of module where you can do that. It's not like a conventional assignment where sometimes you can pull it off and get away with it. If you're not engaging and engaging regularly throughout this, it really does show in your webfolio. And the only students who are referred on this module are the ones that don't engage until it's too late. And you know, they all get referred. It doesn't happen. This module really does find you out from that point of view. So you need to keep chipping away little and often. And what I would suggest as a top tip, and you'll see within the module workbook that I shared with you, there's a series of top tips in there. And the top tips is about your webfolio. And what I would really suggest is once you start and build it and you've got your framework, submit it to the assessment workspace, because the assessment workspace stays open until the deadline. And what you can do is, as you're building it, if you want me to have a look and feedback on something, it's there in the assessment workspace, and I can go in and I can give you some feedback as you're going along. The other thing that's great about that is if you get your draft webfolio in there as soon as possible, that's your submission in. The webfolio is already in there, so you don't need to worry about submitting it on the deadline day. All you do is continue working on it until the deadline passes, and then at that point you can still carry on working on your webfolio. It's just that any changes after the deadline date and time won't be reflected in the version that we see in the workspace. Does that make some sort of sense? So the earlier you can get your outline webfolio there and start building it, and then ask me for feedback as we're going along, the more straightforward it is. And then at that point, hopefully, what's happening is you're worrying about how heavily you're going to score, not whether you're going to pass or fail, but you're thinking, how close am I going to get to 70, 80, 90%? Because you don't want to really be living on the edge when it's coming up to assessment submission in the run-up to Christmas. You want to be feeling fairly confident this is going to be okay. It's just a question of how heavily do I score. Is that all making any kind of sense? I know it's early days in the module, but I think those things are quite important. So how are we feeling? How are we feeling? Less confident, more worried than before we started, or do you think this has helped to allay some of your fears about where we're going with the module? That's feeling better, that's great. Will there be similar webinars along the way? That's entirely up to you as a group. If you find this sort of thing to be useful, we can schedule these maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the module and have a specific focus. So what I'm suggesting is perhaps after the first couple of activities that we have one that focuses primarily just on the assessment. And I think that would be something that would be quite useful. But if there are other things you'd like us to have a webinar on, or just generally sort of troubleshooting, problem solving, we could do that. But again, that's to be driven by you as a group, really. Yeah, Carl, you'll be able to catch up on the recording, and that's the good thing as well, that if you're not able to make the live webinars, you can access the recording, and obviously if you've got any queries, you can post them on the workspace and I'll pick them up from there, which is great. Now, the key thing is just keep working on it little and often, and if you've got things you need me to look at, if they're in your activity workbook or if they're in your webfolio, I'm able to feedback on them and we'll take that along as we go. Okay, so about 2 minutes from the end. So there's still some time for some quick questions, or has that satiated things for everybody at this point in time? Are the activities marked? They're not marked as such, as in they don't contribute to the overall award. But what I do is I provide feedback on the activities, and what you should see if you look at the activities that have been presented in your workbook is that these are things that you would have to do in order to come up with a summative submission of a webfolio anyway. These are activities that you'd have to undertake. So hopefully what you'll see is that they actually build incrementally towards your final submission. So the feedback that I actually give you on your activities, plus the feedback you'll get from your peers, actually contributes to your overall webfolio. So if you're doing the activities and doing them well, it follows that hopefully the submitted webfolio at the end is going to be successful, and then it's just a question of how heavily do you score. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Okay. So are there any other questions before we go? I had a quick look up and down the chat and I can't see any others at that point in time. So unless there are any other questions, what I propose to do is draw it to a close now. Obviously, thank you very much for your attention. Hope it's been useful. I'll get the recording back from Blackboard as quickly as I can. They're not necessarily as fast as I would like, but I will chase them for that. And what I will do is I will embed the recording within the live webinar page of your workbook, so you've got it there and you can keep referring back to it. Okay, so have a good evening, and I'll look forward to engaging with you online a little bit more.